2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe Libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.
Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Johnson, the Last Nighters, and we are going to talk about the Outlaw Josey Wales. This is a bit of a change-up for you. I know it's almost the end of baseball season, and we had to pull the old switcheroo, put in a pinch hitter, change the batting order, whatever we had to do. So the Outlaw Josey Wales will be the show tonight for episode 34, and next week, with a special guest, we will be doing Schooling the World. So look for that next week. This week, Clint Eastwood, hot country western action movie, episode 34. Show notes and more at lastnighters.com/34. Let's say a little to my compadre Comanchero Roberto before we get into the Google description.
At the 11th hour, we switch it up on your asses. And now we're doing a western with Clint Eastwood. Hope you guys like it. Let's check out the old descripciones, Comancheros.
All right, coming at you with the Google description, The Outlaw Josey Wales, 1976, action-adventure, 2 hours and 15 minutes, starring and directed by the old Clint Eastwood himself. 7.9 on the IMDb, 95% Rotten Tomatoes, 69% Metacritic, and 89% of the Google users like it. And the description is thus. Josey Wales, played by Clint Eastwood, watches helplessly as his wife and child are murdered by Union men led by Captain Terrell, played by Bill McKinney. Seeking revenge, Wales joins the Confederate Army. He refuses to surrender when the war ends, but his fellow soldiers go to hand over their weapons and are massacred by Terrell. Wales guns down some of Terrell's men and flees to Texas, where he tries to make a new life for himself, but the bounty on his head endangers him and his new surrogate family. Came out June 26, 1976, shortly after Robert was born. You were not even a month old. Director Clint Eastwood, and adapted from the rebel outlaw Josey Wales. What say you, Robert, on the description?
Are you doxing me, you son of a bitch?
You out there. You are out there.
Damn it. Yeah, that's about the plot of the story, the movies that we watched, right? That was about it, what happened. You got your Clint Eastwood's, I don't know, was this one of his first director jobs? He did an okay job, I guess. I don't know. The whole narrative of this film kind of messed with me. Like I liked Josey for the most part. I wouldn't want to hang out with him. He's always spitting on you. So I don't know if I'd want to he even spit on like a dog. Isn't there like a Hollywood rule you can't hurt the dog? You can't kill the dog. You can't spit on a dog. If there's not a spit on dog rule, there needs to be a spit on dog rule.
Oh, there ought to be a law, huh, Robert?
Yeah, there ought to be a law, Daniel, and a governmental body that oversees it and is appointed, and there needs to be a dog spitting czar, I think. That's exactly what needs to happen, because this is outrageous, what happens in this film. Supposedly the protagonist, who just goes around spitting on people, is supposedly the good guy because his family got murdered.
Well, this isn't just some regular spit either. I mean, this isn't like even the magic loogie from Seinfeld. This is him like with Shaw, right? He's chewing tobacco and spitting very accurately on anything that draws his ire.
Yeah, it's like black tar that he's spitting on people's faces. He'll like kill a guy and then go and spit on their face, their dead face. And then there's this dog who wants to follow him, and he's like, dog, spits on his face.
Well, he spits on the dog a few times.
Yeah. I don't know why the dog would want to hang around this guy.
All right,
so a jerk.
I'm going to go blue on this for just a moment. So we know that Clint spits, right? But there is one instance where he swallows, and that is when near the end when Granny's cleaning the cabin, the ranch cabin, and calls him lazy and says, I'm surprised that you're such a lazy, non-hard worker. He wants to spit on that floor, but he swallows. So that's my really inappropriate moment. But speaking of blue, the directing job on this, the entire beginning opening montage of him seeking vengeance, training up to become a lethal killer, really good with a handgun, and then joining up with the Confederates to kind of become this roving death squad for justice, seeking vengeance. That entire 5 or 10 minutes is all shot in a blue hue. Did
Yeah.
did you think that that was significant in any way? Was that sort of like a dig against the Union, or was it just signifying like his mindset? Like he's super sad, he's grieving, but he's harnessing that energy to lash out and take vengeance.
I guess. I didn't think about that at all. Apparently you've thought about this movie way more than I have, which is fine. Yeah, what did you think of him just joining a death squad? Does is he joins this rebel death squad who just go around and murdering these redlegs who are apparently some sort of a northern death squad. I don't know exactly. All that we really get are that some people think the redlegs were good, like the old granny. She thought the redlegs were noble, and her son actually died as one of the redlegs. But Clint Eastwood thought the redlegs were all terrible, and we're looking to murder every single last one of them. Sure seems to me that if you're joining a death squad just to go murder a bunch of people, whether you know they've committed crimes or not, sure seems like maybe he shouldn't be the protagonist of the movie. I don't know.
Yeah,
Thoughts, Daniel?
well, so it is a little bit muddy, like you sort of get the idea that this is part of the Civil War, but it's out west, right? So it's not directly involved. Information takes a while to get to them, and they're sort of on the edges of the skirmishes and things like that. So when his family gets attacked, it's by Union soldiers, but he wasn't a Confederate soldier at the time. He was just a guy with a family, and these thin blue line thugs were just seeking, people to rape and pillage and burn down the house. And they end up killing his kid and kidnapping his wife, and presumably she is raped and murdered. And he gets knocked the fuck out, Friday style, and then has to bury his kid. So I see, not that he is part of the army, but he joins with like-mindeds. And it's not clear if they are a roving death squad, like we were just talking about, or if they were a Confederate kind of regiment or squad, or what would you call them, like a
Death squad.
right. But if they were like actually, flying the rebel flag and taking orders from,
Their
the
goal
South.
was to hunt down and kill these redlegs. So what else would you call that?
Well,
You
I
could
mean,
call it a murder squad or a death squad or some sort of bounty killer murder death squad. I don't know. You take your pick. You could choose.
right. But what I'm saying is, I don't think they were regular army. I don't think they were like, we're siding with this side in the Civil War and you're on that side and we're going to fight. No, I think this was personal. This was like, no, you redlegs are committing war crimes. You're awful people. You're going around killing and raping indiscriminately. You're not just fighting soldiers. You're, Sherman style, you're destroying citizens, individual people, like innocent parties. And so they were seeking vengeance in that regard, not just, defending their, I don't know, separate country, right? Because after the secessions, it was a separate country. In fact, each state is technically a separate country, at least back at that time.
Right, but this goes back to our RICO trial discussion, where if you're just a member of an organization, does that make you guilty of the crimes of any other member in that organization? Sure seems like Clint Eastwood, as our protagonist, is treating every member of the Redlegs organization as equally guilty as every other member and guilty of all their crimes. And he calls himself, judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is in this show.
But the Redlegs are a contingent within an army. Like they are all soldiers who are like they're in the same like unit, right? Like the Redlegs are a subset of Union soldiers, and the Redlegs are the ones going out doing all this really really evil shit. It's like, in a way, they're sort of all complicit together in this is what they do. They go down, attack innocent people, murder them, rape the women, etc.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. How do we know this? There's one example of this happening, and then there's a couple of characters talking about various things. But there's the one example we get is this group of Union soldiers killing his family and burning his house down.
Very Sherman of them, very Sherman style.
It is Sherman style. It's how they do. But other than that, we're not given, like, this is what they do all the time. This is the whole reason for their existence.
No, actually, I disagree. We are given this during the.
No, we're not. Granny thinks otherwise.
Granny believes the propaganda bullshit from her son, saying that, oh, we're doing great, wonderful things, when he was actually part of this murderous Redlegs. But here's the tell. Okay, when the Confederacy loses the war, and the information finally makes its way, and like, hey, you guys are the last remnant that hasn't surrendered yet. So come down tomorrow and turn in your weapons. We'll grant you full amnesty. You pledge to the Union, etc., and all's forgiven. When their leader, forget his name, Fletcher, goes down to take the men in, And the Redlegs commander comes out and he's like, I'm not turning ourselves into this guy. He's murderous scum. He can't be trusted. He's the leader of the Redlegs and they do evil, vile shit.
Is that all your evidence?
That is. And speaking of
that's hearsay, sir. It's not admissible in this court.
Well, I'm gonna believe him as a character witness. Now, here's the other thing I have to ask is, so Fletcher was turning on the men, but he didn't know that they were going to be murdered, right? Backstabbed by the Union.
I don't think he knew, no.
But he was getting paid to convince them to turn themselves in. But why?
Almost certainly.
Why does he volunteer the information that Josey Wales isn't turning himself in? Like, why not just? I mean, I guess you don't have a movie if he does, if he doesn't do this. But
yeah,
why did just say, hey, here's all the guys?
Yeah, that's what you would say. You would say, yep, this is it. This is all of us. There's nobody else. Got every single man, unless he's being a total dick and hates Wales.
Yeah.
But instead he takes the other route and being like, except for Josey Wales, the legend, the unstoppable killing machine. You'll never get him. He's the best. Don't even try, because he'll kill you all.
Right. It's going to take more than 5 or 6 Comancheros to bring him down. Now, the other...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the other thing about him is when the opening happens and his wife and son get taken and attacked, he's not a fighter at that point. He's just a farmer guy. And it's only in his grieving where he trains up. There's like that montage where he's shooting that post and it sort of does these jump cuts and he gets better and better and better. And then after,
there's a montage. We all know about training montages.
Well, it means you can become expert level. Kung fu. It's like
all you need is a series of shots of you doing a thing, and all of a sudden you're the best. It's true.
It is so unequivocally true that it's in almost every movie. But
that's right.
He must have taken that magic elixir from the charlatan that's good for everything, even though he doesn't know what's in it. But so Josey, trains up, and then when he's in the vigilante death squad, Fletcher must make note that he's like the most driven, the most capable. And so when he does sort of out him, he's right. Like, you guys are gonna have trouble bringing this guy in because he is a fucking badass. And he is a badass in this movie.
Well, he is a badass, but we don't get to see the things that they're talking about him being a badass about. We see him doing his own badass stuff, but he seems to be a legend for stuff that happened in the credits montage, which is, I kind of wish we'd been able to see a little bit of that. Because when they're talking about him being the best, we're like, really? He's the best? Okay, I guess. But I didn't really see any of that.
Well, I think he did some best type stuff. And also, I'll make note of this. It's often more effective to allude to something, to build up the legend of something, than to show it. Like a lot of times horror movies are more frightening if they don't show you the monster, but they make you imagine what the monster must be like, in the tension that they build. So similarly, I think not showing him be this Mary Sue character like you see in Jedi with Rey, where you're like, well, why is she just like amazingly good at everything? You're sort of, the legend is built up. It precedes him. He becomes like Paul Bunyan standards of people, fishtail style, think that he's way better than maybe he really is. Even though in the instances where he's like, we got you now, Josey Wales, he gets out of all of those situations. Like there's 3 or 4 of them in a row where they've got him dead to rights and they don't just shoot him. And
they're ridiculous situations, by the way. I mean, the way he gets out of them, ridiculous.
Well,
first of all,
the Missouri boat ride was fun. That one was fun.
He shoots a rope from who knows how far away, splits it in half with a single shot. Are you kidding me?
He's that good.
Okay, he's that good. And then he's got 2 guys with 2 guns on him.
Yeah, Ladge and Abe. They try to nab him.
And he's holding his own guns out, butt firsts. And he flips them around and guns both guys down before they can get a shot off.
Well, Sweet Rose Alabama boy shoots the one. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about in the
trading post. Yeah.
Trading post, yeah, with the girl.
Yeah, the squaw. Yeah. Oh, and before we get into that, well, it's sort of related. So, they say bring your guns out butt first. They're disarming him, trying to defang him is what they say.
Why don't they just shoot him in the head?
Right, but this also reminds me of when the Confederate guys went down to the Union camp to turn themselves in, and they had to hand over all their guns. They had to be disarmed, right? And I mean, that's what happens when you disarm people. You disarm a population. Then the authority, quote unquote, the authority, have free reign over you. There's no means to defend yourself at that point.
Yeah. When they turn in over their guns, and then they're just sitting ducks for whatever the Union want to do to them. That's what you do. That's why you disarm your enemy before you mass slaughter them. It's why Hitler disarmed the Jews before he started mass slaughtering them. It's why tyrants are always in favor of gun control, because you don't like it when your victims can fight back.
Yeah, precisely. And this ties in, and we'll get back to the movie in a second here, but the whole Second Amendment argument that people have, and they're like, oh, well, they didn't mean anything beyond a musket. No, what they meant was, after throwing off a tyrannical government, they weren't about to say, okay, from now on, only tyrannical governments can have guns. That makes no fucking sense, right? Like, they just threw one off. So to think that they can now we're going to limit what the people can have is totally the antithesis of what the intention would have been. They're not going to go through all that effort.
The militias of the revolution with their rifles and their training threw off probably the greatest army in the world at the time.
Right.
Why would they then turn around and go, guns, who needs them?
Right. And then people like to talk about, well-regulated, as in the present day sense of the word, like government controlled and dictated. No, well-regulated at that time meant well-equipped, with the intention of being equal to or better equipped than the government itself, so that they had the means to defend themselves.
Yeah.
All right, I'm getting off my soapbox here.
You can be on a soapbox all you want, Daniel. It's your show. Do what you want, buddy.
All right, well, so here's the other thing about this. The senator fucking lied to them, right? The senator said, oh, yeah, you're going to, turn you guys in and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't just the Union soldiers doing it. It was a politician.
Are you kidding me? A politician didn't tell the truth?
Right. Didn't tell the truth. But we always do tell the truth when we're launching
I might faint.
Launching new ideas in your direction at thelaunchpadmedia.com, which we are the Monday show. I have lately been forgetting to mention that earlier in the episodes. We're about 20 minutes into the Last Nighters here. And hey, we're on the Launchpad Media, just so you know. Check it out.
Well, even good old Ten Bears says that governments are achieved by the double tongues, which is a nice line.
Right. And the ferryman does the same thing, right? He's singing Dixie when he's bringing the Southern guys across, and even as he leaves their side of the shoreline, and then he halfway across starts singing Amazing Grace or whatever the Union equivalent.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so everyone's two-faced in this thing. And then let's get to God, what's his name? The old man, the old Indian guy. He is like my favorite. He is an awesome dude, and he's talking about how he's civilized the 5 civilized tribes because they dressed like Lincoln. But he knows from the Trail of Tears, he talks about how you can't trust the white man. And yeah, it's Lone Wadey is his name. And
well, you can't trust government.
Right.
That's for sure.
And I think what he meant by that was government. He was talking about like Secretary of the Interior and Lincoln and all those guys. And I love when he decides to start traveling with Josey after he tells Josey the story and Josey just falls asleep because he gives zero fucks about anything.
Yeah, it's true.
But when Lone Wadey decides, okay, I'm going to hook up with this dude and we're going to go travel, he burns his Abraham Lincoln clothing and starts dressing like Josey.
Good for him.
All right.
Yeah, it's sad that, oftentimes the behaviors of government get ascribed to, a people as a whole. But, it happens a lot.
Right. And later on.
Throughout the world and throughout time and throughout history.
Later on, when they're talking about 10 Bears, they're like, yeah, your generals have been coming back every year, taking more and more land, pushing him further and further back. And he's at the point now where he's not willing to move anymore. And Eastwood's reply is, they're not my generals.
Yeah. He's like, governments are always lying to you, but I'm here to tell you the truth. I give you my word of death or my word of life. It's a pretty badass little interaction between those two.
Yeah, I know we're sort of jumping ahead because that's near the end. And I want to say that after seeing that speech, I was like, oh, man, of course. I mean, Clint Eastwood, he speaks about libertarianism here and again. I've got some quotes from him that are really quite good. And that speech between the two is very libertarian in my mind. They're like,
sure.
I respect your right to live, but if you want to aggress against me, well, then you're going to have to deal with me defending myself and vice versa. And I'm offering you either, you pick. I'm willing to do both and I'm hoping for one. But if you, do the other, then you're going to pay the immediate cost of that.
Right. And, two people, very different people can live together in peace side by side without, both having, a vested interest in living and trade and cooperation. It's only when governments get involved that they just screw everything up. I mean, not that there aren't problems and there wouldn't be problems in a free society, but you're just guaranteeing problems and conflict and everything else with governments who are constantly promising things to people who want the government to do things because they want, the return on their tax investment, I guess you could call it.
or their contributions or their bribes or their underhanded dealings. I mean, it's
Right.
it's that ring of power that they're all grasping for, and those who do have the grasp on it have favors that they can sell. So that's going to draw people to try to buy favors from them, and that's going to make them be these double-tongued, two-faced liars and do the exact opposite of what they say they're going to do. And it's like the recipe. It doesn't matter how good the person is in most cases. Like the occasional Ron Paul you'll get, but it's so few and far between. I mean, the Lord Acton quote is like so prescient in this, in that just having that power, even if you go into it with good intentions, you're going to get corrupted. It's just that's the game. It's the only way to get anything done, right?
Right. And even with the people who believe that they're not corrupted, like they believe that they're doing these things for the benefit of society. Like I'm not going to take this dirty money from this corporation and do this thing, but I'm going to pass this law that, 51% of the people voted for or whatever for the good of the people. Well, you're still tyrannizing the 49%. I mean, all these politicians that are passing these, straw laws or plastic bag laws or, anti-smoking laws or there's a billion of these things. They all think that they're doing the right thing. They think this tyranny is just the greatest, that these are how people should act and ought to act. What they don't realize, or maybe they do, I don't know. But what they're saying is that anybody who does this and refuses to comply ought to die. And that sounds like hyperbole, but it isn't. What's the logical conclusion of any law? If you say, want to sell some straws and someone comes up to you and says, you can't do that anymore. There's a law, passed a law. And you're like, tough, I don't care. I'm selling these straws. Well, now there's this conflict. And who's going to win that conflict? And so then they say, well, okay, we're going to fine you. Well, I'm not going to pay the fine because I believe I'm right in my right to sell straws. Well, you don't pay that fine, you're going to go to jail. Well, I'm not going to jail. Well, you're going somewhere, buddy. And there's a physical conflict. And if you resist, you will die. If you resist enough, maybe they'll try and use some kind of soft, less lethal measure. Well, people die from less lethal measures all the time. But let's say you never stop resisting. You will ultimately be killed for selling a straw. And these are the goody two-shoe politicians who think, we're just doing the best thing for society. And now I'm off my soapbox.
All right. Well, hell is coming to breakfast. Let's get into a little bit of economics for a minute. Little sidebar here. The granny is in the up-and-coming town that is contrasted later by Santa Rio, which is a derelict town that is on its way to becoming a ghost town. We can talk about that a little bit. I have some points to make there. But Granny is buying from the general store, and the guy who works there is from Indiana, and she's talking to him about how she doesn't like Missouri people, and she won't buy products from there, so she's not going to buy molasses. Now,
they're all a bunch of bushwhackers. Everybody knows that. Come on.
Right. I'm not going to buy anything from there. Well, she's foregoing either having that at all, because I doubt he's got molasses from other places, right? You don't have a whole lot of selection here. Or she's willing to pay more for molasses from elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
This is a market mechanism. This is her, voting with her dollars, and it's kind of dumb in this particular case, but this is what people do every day. Boycotts, buying things from where you want, being willing to pay more, or wanting the best deal or whatever. And that is so the opposite of the democratic process, even the Republican process, representative government. This is you choosing for you as an individual and paying the cost of that decision. Robert,
right. And paying the extra cost for her prejudice against goods coming out of Missouri.
Right. And then she says, we Jayhawkers, we don't care much about you Hoosiers either. But she still buys stuff from him.
Well, yes, within reason. Come on now, Daniel.
Within reason, yes. All right. So there is the moment in the town right after that where he's holding the goods that he's purchased, and 4 Union soldiers get made aware that that's Josey Wales because the elixir scammer sales guy says, oh, there's Josey Wales. And there's this brief
Hang on.
standoff.
I take umbrage with your word scammer. We don't know that his miracle stuff didn't create miracles. We never get to see it.
I think he gets exposed by Wadey.
I think he uses it to take out that stain, the spit stain. that Clint Eastwood spits on him.
After the Missouri boat ride? Yeah. Or right before that? Yeah. Yeah, he probably did get the stain out. And doesn't Lone Wadey ask him if it gets stains out?
Yeah. He goes, maybe it'll work on stains.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry to derail you. Go ahead.
No, it's totally fine. So he gets called out, and the Union soldiers are like, oh crap. So there's this brief moment because his legend precedes him, right? They know that he's the guy they want to get, but they also know that the legend is that they're going to die. And lo and behold, they do. But it was interesting how he surveyed the scene, and he told Lone Wadey about it later, how he chose which one to shoot first because he was going to shoot the one who drew first. And I don't know how the whole mechanics of these like draw and fire gun battles work, but I guess, you know, in the Old West style, which was far less than what we see in the movies, right? There's a couple of articles on the Mises site about how one's called The Not So Wild West, and I think there's a book that's related as well. And in it, they talk about how the number of murders and bank robbings in the entire 25-year period in the Old West was actually fewer than in Columbus, Ohio in like 2013 or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So anyway, it was just really interesting because he was so expert level at reading people and knowing which one was going to go first. And he talked about the crazy eyes. And I want to talk about crazy eyes for a minute because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has the crazy eyes.
You think she's going to shoot first?
She's already shots fired, man. She's already saying, I'm coming for your wallet. She's already...
it's true.
It's your money, and I want it now.
Can't wait to get your money. It's going to be great.
Anyway, I was just wondering, that displayed some of his skill, as did the defending himself from the guys on the side of the riverbank who thought they had him dead to rights, and the guys at the trading post. I mean, there are instances where he does do some badass stuff. Like he takes on those Comancheros later on where they're going to rape the girl, and they decide not to because they're going to save her purity for 10 bears because they're going to trade him to 10 bears. Like he does
in one of the worst shot scenes in history.
Fair enough. But Josey does do some pretty amazing get out of jail free cards here on his, you know, amazing skills.
No, he's a badass. It's true. He is. I'm not saying he's not. I just question whether or not he's, you know, I mean, he's a flawed hero, I guess. You know, he doesn't act like, he's kind of like an anti-hero, I suppose. I guess he's only spitting on the bad people. Although what that dog did to anybody, I'll never know. But, you know, when he spit on the elixir salesman, I was like, WTF, bro? Come on, he's just selling a product. What do you got? If you don't want the product, don't buy it. But you don't got to spit on the guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I mean, the guy, he was a smarmy guy. But yeah, spitting on him was over the top. I didn't mind him spitting on the guys who just tried to murder him. I'm kind of okay with that. Like that's
on their dead corpses.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I defended myself, and I'm an angry motherfucker. That's my vengeance, and I'm going to spit on you because it's his thing.
Well, it's his thing, but he's also, I guess, when you're chewing that chaw, you got to spit on a regular basis because you can't swallow that stuff. So, you know, I suppose it's whatever.
Yes. All right. So let's get into Lone Wadey because I know that you want to talk about this part. Lone Wadey, we've already talked about him a little bit. He was one of the civilized tribes. He was wearing the Lincoln outfit, then he burned it. But they're at the riverbank with the squaw, and they're like, oh, you got to have an edge. And they're watching her, like, clean her legs or whatever, and like, oh, she's got an edge right there. And later on, we discover the old man has mad game.
Yeah. He says he's not as old as he thought he was. And good on him. Atta boy.
But I found that he was quite spry when they say, oh, we're being followed. Let's go across the sand here. And then they get to a berm, and somebody jumps off and knocks down the person who's been following them. And it turns out it's the squaw. And when I first saw that happen, I was like, oh, that's got to be Clint, right? No, it's the old man. He's spry, man. Yeah,
he's a good guy. Yeah, I don't know what your fascination is with this old dude, but I mean, if I'm as spry as he is at that age, that'd be great. I mean, he is kind of the, I don't know if you want to say like the soul of the movie. That's not the right word.
He's almost the comic relief. He's a bit of the foil. He's the personality that Clint doesn't bring. You know, Clint, as much as I like him, and a lot of it's because of his libertarian leanings, but he's sort of the same guy in almost every one of his Westerns that I've seen.
In every one of his movies. He plays just like this cranky old gruff dude almost all the time. I can't think of a movie where he's not like some silent or quiet, stoic, straight man dude.
Every which way but loose.
Is he like the wacky guy?
He's got the orangutan.
Yeah, he's got an orangutan, but the orangutan's the one with all the personality, right? And he's just gruff old Clint Eastwood. This monkey.
Yeah, you could be right. I haven't seen that one in a
long
time.
I haven't seen that movie in a million years. Who knows?
Let me ask you this. Have you seen this movie before?
Yes.
Okay, I had not. I've seen a bunch of Clint movies, but it's been a long time. And I got to say, when he did that detente or the parlay with 10 Bears, I was like, oh, this is sweet. Now 10 Bears is going to like become his gang, right? They're going to fight the Redlegs. And that never came to fruition, which is a little bit sad, but they didn't even need him. They defended themselves quite well, just from the the defensive position they had in the little ranch.
Yeah, it seems strange for them to. I mean, I like the meeting between Clint and Ten Bears, and it's a good chance for them to really show their character. But why forge that alliance if it's not going to do anything at the end of the movie? It's kind of strange, and it happens right almost at the end of the movie anyway. I mean, that's like the penultimate scene is him going to see Ten Bears, and then right after that is the big finale for the most part.
Right. So maybe it was a bit of a misdirection, like to the audience. It's like, all right, there's going to be this huge clash, and then when Ten Bears never shows up, then you realize that they could do it on their own. Maybe, I don't know. I'm reaching a bit here, but I also wanted to talk about Santa Rio because it's like the opposite of the other town that they were in originally, and there's still these people hanging out in what's the bar's name, the Lonely Lady. And they say, first the silver ran out, then the people, then the whiskey, then the beer. Well, I got to ask, what are you still doing there?
That was exactly my question. First of all, it looked like, I mean, I understand the budget probably wasn't super high, but it looked like, they just, in some canyon somewhere, they just threw up a couple of old buildings because it didn't look like it was ever anything to begin with. But whatever, maybe some old ghost town, that's what it looks like these days too. But when he goes in there and they're just sitting around, not doing anything and having no reason, I mean, where's the food coming from? Where's the water? Where's any kind of money whatsoever for whatever reason? And why, when these people are just sitting around going, yeah, everything's gone, why are you still there? What's keeping you?
Yeah, and we talked about
sense.
this. We talked about this a little bit in our Cars episode, and I forget what episode number that was, but look back in our catalog and you'll find it because they're living on Highway Route 66, and then the highway gets built and the town dies, but all of the establishments try to hang on, and they just fall into derelict condition, similar to Santa Rio here. And so I see a lot of strong parallels. Like, well, if you're responding to changes, because everything you do is you're trying to forecast the future. You're trying to make decisions that you think are going to improve your situation. They're not being very good forecasters here. They're not being very good entrepreneurs here in keeping their business in a totally dead town.
They're not even coming close to observing objective reality. Like Radiator Springs people, at least there was a road that people would sometimes drive as like a scenic road that people would take to go, eventually pass through Radiator Springs. Like there was that, the very beginning of the movie, and then when there's the romance happening, they drive through the hills and it's all windy and nice. And you could see some sports cars or some motorcycles driving through, eventually getting there. But what's anybody going to this little dump of a ghost town for no reason? Not only would nobody go there, there's no reason for anybody to go there. Like there's not even a trading post. Like it's not like a path between places because there wasn't even anything for them to get there. Like he orders some whiskey, he orders some beer. They don't have anything. What do they eat? Are they eating tumbleweeds? I don't even know.
Yeah, so that part doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, moving on, let's talk about, let's see, what do I have here? Oh, when they get to the little ranch that Granny has heard about from her son, who said he was fighting for the just cause, the Union. She starts cleaning it up, and Clint is just like standing there in the doorway. And she says, if you don't work, you don't eat around here. And I didn't figure you for a loafer. Now, I kind of like this a little bit, though then later on, she does the exact opposite thing. But when she's talking about you don't work, you don't eat, do you think she means if you don't join the commune, everyone does the equal work, everyone gets the equal food? Or does she mean more in the you get the rewards that you work for? How did you read that? Because the second part I'm going to say is going to taint the response that I had.
I got the feeling that it was more in the sense that, in a commune sense, in the sense that, when you're in a family's kind of a commune, kind of. I mean, you don't pay for anything. I mean, you're generally all associated by blood, but not always. But, you don't necessarily have to contribute something in order to get fed, especially as a small child. But as you grow up and maybe you're a little bit older, maybe you're an adult or a teenager, you're definitely more expected to pitch in and contribute. And if she's taking it to the level of you don't work, you don't eat, period, then that's taking it to the level of commune, where you're expected to eat or you're expected to work and then you can eat. That's the way I took it.
Right. And oddly enough, it would also work out that way in Ancapistan. If you don't work, you're not going to eat either, unless people are being charitable.
That's right.
Right. So we square that circle. But you're right. The next thing she says, or Wadey says, is Granny says, this is our home. It's all of ours. So yeah, she really is saying, this is all, we're all together and we now all equally own the same thing. Like we don't have individual property rights. We have collective rights here.
But it would have been hers, right? I mean, it's her son whose property it was. So now she's kind of like sharing it with everybody. And if, you own a piece of property, you have every right to be able to do that if you want.
Right, and these other people were there to help her, right? They pledged helping her.
Right.
The people in the bar, the lonely lady, the lusty lady. Do you remember the lusty lady? It's gone now in downtown Seattle. They used to have the funniest signs on it.
The lusty lady. It's ringing a bell. I don't think I ever went in there. Was that? Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
iconic
yeah, yeah.
pink sign, and they always had some funny, like quirky little quip on there.
Yeah, it's like 99 hot girls and 2 ugly ones or whatever it was.
I think that's a different thing, but
Oh, okay.
but it's a similar deal. It's like a peep show type place. I think I went in there once when I was 18.
Right on. Sure, Daniel.
But anyway, it's gone now, and now it's condos. But yeah, the lonely lady, the people pledged to like help Granny because they had known her son and really liked him.
Yes.
All right. So I wanted to also talk a little bit about the no offense taken stuff because they do a tit for tat, which is kind of fun. Because Granny's like, when they're talking about defending the house because they think they're going to get attacked by the Comanches, Granny says she doesn't like Redskins or something like that. But Wadey's right there, and he's an Indian. And she says, no offense meant, and he says, none taken. And this is where they're talking about how they got to get mean, don't lose their heads, don't give up. Because if you give up, then you neither live or win. And that's just the way it is. That's how things work. And he puts on like war paint and says it's his death face. And when he said it's his death face, I think she, in the movie, seemed to understand it as he thought he was going to die. But I read that as, no, it's his war face. It's like my death face is, if you fuck with me, you're going to die.
Right. And the whole tit for tat thing with and then, Granny is shooting, or no, the Indian guy is shooting some pale skins. He's like, I'm going to show these pale skins what for or whatever. And then he says, no offense. And she says, none taken.
Yeah, I think it was pale face, but yeah.
Right. So, it's not necessarily like, yeah, I guess you could call these like racist terms, I suppose.
Well, they'd call
what
it
they
that
really,
now.
What they really mean is, these people come in to try and kill us, and they just so happen to be what I'm describing. The Indians before the white man came, they fought all the time with each other, and they had no qualms about killing other Indians. And hell, white people have been killing each other all the time since time immemorial too. It's not necessarily, I hate to say the left, but the left really likes to play up the whole race angle when it's really many, many other factors that, contributes to conflict and violence and murder and death and whatever. But, they like to look at this lens, the world through this lens of racism. And that's what caused this. Now, definitely racism helps. Racism absolutely helps when you're trying to demonize your enemy. When you're trying to get people who have no dog in the fight to all of a sudden hate a bunch of people and send their children to go fight and die in some war. They will, demonize anybody for any kind of difference they can glom onto.
Dehumanize them, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if they were a bunch of people who hated, Voltron, and you guys like Voltron, then you'd be like, oh, these Voltron haters, let's go kill them. Just whatever they can possibly think of, and race is just a big fat easy target. So it gets used a lot in history. And if it hadn't have been race, if all human beings all looked the same, it would be some other reason. It used to be that left-handed people were, discriminated against. And that, when you were born or you were a little kid and you'd pick up something and try and draw with something left-handed, like your father would like slap the thing out of your hands and like pick it up with your right hand.
Yeah, it's like in the King's Speech. We did that one not too long ago.
Yeah. So it's human nature. It's not necessarily, it's just racism. It's just this big, fat, easy target that gets used a lot because it's big, fat, and easy and obvious. And, people look differently than you. So they probably are different than you, Daniel. They probably eat babies.
They probably do. Now, here's the interesting thing is, we've often talked about, well, they couldn't make this movie now. I don't think they could with the, redskin and pale face and a lot of the other kind of things that they talk about. But, it's almost to the point now where you can't even talk about something like we might get, I don't know, people upset for even bringing it up.
Yeah, if this movie was made today, like the way that that other movie was remade recently. Gosh, what is that movie?
Magnificent Seven?
Seven or whatever?
Oh, yeah, it's all PC now.
Yeah, it'd just all be sanitized, all scrubbed free of any kind of uncomfortable dialogue, any kind of interesting themes, any kind of, character, just scrubbed free of any of that stuff, any of that uncomfortable stuff from the past that human beings used to talk about all the time and didn't really give a shit about. You know how your grandparents used to be like casually racist? Because that's just the way people talk. They didn't really care. It's not that they had a whole bunch of hatred and whatever in their hearts for these other people. That's just a way to talk. I I couldn't, if someone is actually racist, it's like not even the worst thing in the world. I care what you do, what your actions are, not what you believe. You could be as racist as you want.
See,
And as long as you're not hurting somebody, I really don't care. I mean, I probably won't want to hang out with you, but
yeah, that's what I was going to say. If I knew someone who was openly racist in that respect, I just wouldn't want to associate with them. But I wouldn't go looking for racism in totally neutral things, which it seems to be like they're on a scavenger hunt, the left, for anything that can
well,
be
they're
possibly construed as.
right. Well, it's the oppression Olympics. So if you got to be looking for oppression everywhere you can. You got to be digging it up under every rock.
Yeah, it's always Western culture, racism, or capitalism's fault. All the ills in the
Patriarchy.
world. Yeah, patriarchy. It's men, it's white Western men, essentially.
We're just the most evil people who have ever existed for some reason.
Now, I'm not even like too keen on the whole, alt-right stuff, but I do think that there is something to be learned from Western culture, and it has developed the most, like vibrant economic situation. And everyone just sort of disregards that and just wants to kill the golden goose, so to speak.
Yeah, disregards it at the same time as enjoying the fruits of it.
Yeah, and even if you get into a debate with these guys, with these people, I just did it again. Call them guys. With these Gersons peoples. I don't know, but even if you respond to their first or second or third fallacy that they believe, and you counter it eloquently and decisively, logically, empirically, etc., they'll just have another one right after it because they already have that sentence of death for capitalism in their pocket.
And when it's identity politics, basically it doesn't matter what you say because you're a cis white male and all your arguments are invalid from the get-go. So they can just be dismissed.
It's the elixir, dude. Their argumentation is the elixir. It's good for anything. It's the elixir of racism. You're a racist. You're a fascist. Whatever,
So why should I listen to anything you have to say?
Right. And it cures everything, every argument. It always, they don't have to think. All they have to do is throw that elixir, that tonic out there, and bim, bam, thank you, ma'am. That's probably offensive now. They get to walk away feeling like they've got the moral high ground, even though they're the ones advocating for government violence. Anyway, I digress. Let's get into the final stretch here because we got to start winding this one down. I want to talk a bit more about the meeting between Ten Bears and Josey. And I wrote down a couple of the lines here. So why don't I just read them out to you and then let's discuss. Is that cool with you?
I will bear with you.
Oh, man. I had a string of like 5 or 6 shows in a row where I was doing the bad puns. And I squashed that. And here you are bringing that up again. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that, Robert.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Eastwood talks to Ten Bears and is like, I came here to die with you or live with you. Dying's not hard for men like you and me. It's the living that's hard. When everything you've ever loved has been butchered or raped. Governments don't live together. People live together. With governments, you don't always get a fair word or a fair fight. Well, I've come here to give you either one and get either one from you. I came here like this to let you know that my word of death is true and that my word of life is then true as well. And then the Ten Bears responds, it's sad that governments are chiefed by the double tongues. There's iron in your word of death, and there's iron in your word of life. No signed paper can hold the iron. It must come from men. It is good that warriors such as us should meet in the struggle for life or death, and it shall be life. So and then they become blood brothers. And that's like the Step Brothers scene where like, did we just become best friends?
Yeah, and this is a great example of like, a verbal contract of two men getting together and deciding how they're going to behave with each other. And they don't write it down, although I'm perfectly fine if you want to write things down, that's great too. But these are two people who come to an understanding. And, if either one of them ever violates that understanding, there would be retribution. And I think either one of them would perfully understand why.
Yeah,
this is how things would get solved. And with mutual respect.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed this. And then there was one point, let's see, no signed paper can hold the iron. And I think he was referring to like no treaty or constitution really holds you bound to your agreement. It's the men themselves that need to bind them to the agreement.
Yeah, I would think, very few people in history of the United States have been screwed over by the United States government as much as the Native Americans were. They were shuffled around and murdered and fought against.
Treaties violated.
No, the treaties were just, absolutely untrustworthy pieces of paper. So I could see why that line was written and why the Native Americans had a healthy distrust of any kind of, agreement or treaty made with the government in the United States.
Yeah, and sometimes trouble just follows a man. So let's get into the. We already talked a little bit about how they defend themselves.
Well, wait. Before we move on, I just want to say, even if some government bureaucrat makes a treaty with some tribal chief and has the best of intentions and truly intends to honor that agreement, well, he's out of office in a couple of years, and the next guy come in and is like, who cares? That was the other guy. I got a whole new policy, and this happens all the time. These new people, they don't feel, obligated by the agreements made by others. So, I mean, it's just the nature of the system, I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree. And he says with governments, you don't always get a fair word or a fair fight. And that's what you see. That's exactly what you're talking about. And we dive into this quite a bit in our entire series with Liberty Weekly on Wild Wild Country, which I highly recommend that people watch that on Netflix and then check out each episode that we did, an analysis of it at libertyweekly.net/WWC with Pat McFarland, and then some guest hosts while he was studying for the bar exam. And then we just finished the last 2 episodes in a double feature with Sherry Voluntary. So that one's really good, really cool. I had a lot of fun on that.
Me too. Even though we had a little bit of technical difficulties, I think it'll all come together.
Phrasing. All right. So let's talk a little bit about them defending themselves from the Redlegs, and then Clint goes after the leader guy and seppukus him. Seppa kills him with his own sword. It's badass.
Yeah, that was, I had a bit of an issue with that. So am I to believe that the leader of this group of people coming to kill Clint is also one of the guys that killed his family? That's the impression I got, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, he was the leader of the Redlegs. The Redlegs was this regiment that was going around doing this stuff, and it was the Redlegs who had killed his family.
Right. So, okay, so if this is the story, guy kills your family, then guy joins murder gang trying to kill these guys. Ultimately, he leaves the murder gang, goes off on his own, and is hunted by new murder gang. Guy escapes. Ultimately gets revenge on Guy because he just happened to be one of the guys who chased him. That doesn't feel satisfying to me. It's like, oh, that was kind of a coincidence. Oh, that was a happy accident that I just so happened to get revenge on the guy who killed my family because he just so happened to be one of the guys who was chasing me. I like my protagonists to really, if he wants a thing, seek it out and get it. Not just be like, oh, well, that was nice. He just so happened to be one of the guys who was chasing me.
Yeah, I'll give you that a little bit. I mean, it does tie the story together, of course. But earlier on, when he's talking, I think, to Wadey for the first time, he says, because Wadey wants to go south to Mexico, like head through Texas. And Josey says, I got unfinished business in Missouri. So I thought that meant his mission of vengeance isn't complete yet.
Which is good, because it wasn't. But are you to tell me that if he hadn't killed this guy in this final showdown here, the movie would have continued for another whoever knows how long as he travels over to Missouri to try and find this one guy? I don't think so. I think if this guy didn't happen to be part of this group, then he would have just survived, and then he would have been, living with these family here in this little branch, and that would be the end of the movie. Maybe. I don't know. It didn't sit right with me. It didn't leave me satisfied. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I like the little showdown, but first of all, the Alamo scene, not great. Not great. How terrible are these ex-army guys that they don't kill a single person and they all get massacred?
Oh, and how many are there? I mean, it seems like there's maybe a dozen of them approaching the house, and then during the fight, there's at least 30 of them.
Yeah, at least 30 of them get shot. It's just like endless guys that keep getting shot and getting ketchup on their shirts. Oh, well.
It's the 70s.
It's fine.
All right, so let's talk about the final end. I mean, you were talking about you had an unsatisfied feeling at the end of him killing the Redlegs commander. How about when he runs into Fletcher in The Lonely Lady with the Texas Ranger bounty hunter dudes? And they're like, yeah, so you say you saw Josey get gunned down by 5 Comanchero dudes? All right, can you sign here? And, just sign this paperwork. The bureaucracy will be happy and we'll be on our way.
Yeah, it just made me think of, how many tall tales and wild stories, got spawned and how easily it was back then, I suppose, and you can't just get on the internet and find out something when you just have, eyewitness testimonies and signatures and to establish the facts of a case. And yeah, I thought it was pretty good for the most part. I liked that, there wasn't another showdown. I liked that they just kind of had an understanding and they were going to let, enough blood be shed that they were going to go on their separate ways. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised that Fletcher was given like what Clint didn't have hate for the guy. Like, I would have thought, okay, you were the commanding person for the force of Death Squad that I was a part of with you, and you sent all of your men to turn themselves in and get murdered. You're sort of on the hook for that. So I would think that Clint or Josie would be upset about this and want vengeance against him as well. But
Yeah, he didn't seem to be. Maybe he didn't blame him. It's not clear that he knew or even suspected that. I mean, he did mow down a whole bunch of Union guys with that Gatling gun and then escape somehow, like a magician.
yeah,
That's like he's David Copperfield. He's in this wagon, and it's not like there's anything behind the wagon for a great distance. And then they go up to this wagon, and suddenly he's just gone.
abracadabra.
You know,
Houdini.
Daniel.
He's Houdini.
He's you got to have some flair, you got to have some showmanship, and when you can just disappear into thin air, that's how legends grow.
Indeed. And speaking of legends, let's get into our final summary and review. Robert the Legend, you may go first.
All right. So the Outlaws, the Josey Wales' guy. He's a tough talking dude. He'll spit in your face if he doesn't like the look in your eye. I remember, I think I read an interview where Clint Eastwood really liked this movie. Like, it was his best work, his most complete work, at least up to that time. And it probably was. I don't know if he had, really directed much before this, but he's certainly gone on to direct many, many great films. And I don't know if he's just a better director than he is an actor. I think he's perfectly fine as an actor, but he definitely does not have a range. Not that he really casts himself or gets cast in roles he's not suited for. Let's put it that way. He's kind of like, they know what he's good at and will put him into that role and he'll do just fine. And that's the way it works, which is fine. Just don't go expecting him to really blow your mind. And it felt, watching this, like kind of a first directorial type of effort. It didn't feel super great. It wasn't clean. The shots weren't great. It just didn't, the story didn't quite flow very well for me. It felt like there were some scenes that could have been in there, would explain things better. But for what it was, I enjoyed it. I appreciate the kind of libertarian feel to it. But I don't know if this is like one of the great Westerns of all time. I certainly don't feel that way about it. But it is kind of fun. It's kind of fun. I'll put it that way. It's fine. It's just a movie that's pretty good movie. Watch the movie if you want to watch a movie. It's a 6.5, and that's the truth.
Well, I'm going to send you on a Missouri boat ride, Robert.
You son of a bitch. Not if I spit in your face first.
I enjoyed this movie. It was awesome. I was intrigued from the start, and the guy seeking vengeance for his family being murdered in front of him, and going out and training up to become expert level to achieve that vengeance it's a story that I just really enjoy. And him getting out of all of those situations where they've got him and he just doesn't bat an eye about it. He's just like so cool as a cucumber. And
but wait a minute. I'm taking umbrage with your review here. I apologize to interrupt, but we don't see him training to get harder and get better. We just see a montage, and then he's the Terminator after that.
Yeah, and as you know, in a movie, the musical montage of him training makes him expert level, jacked up, Matrix Kung Fu style. You know this.
Fair enough. He becomes Neo and the Terminator due to montage.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And a buzzard's got to eat, same as worms. So that was the other thing. He's cold-blooded. Like, even after the Alabama boy dies, he sends his corp through the camp as a diversion because he says, well, they can bury you better than I can, and they shoot him up. Meanwhile, he just nonchalantly makes it into the Indian lands. And I was like, Rick James style, cold-blooded. But anyhow, I really enjoyed this movie. This was a recommended movie by someone in the Launchpad Media Group. He's like, you got to do the Outlaw Josey Wales, and we had an opportunity. The thing for what we were going to record fell through. So I'm glad that it did, and I watched this last night and really, really enjoyed it. I'm up there at like an 8.8, man. This thing is it's a fun movie, and I'm excited to watch more Clint Eastwood, actually, as a result of this one.
Wow. For Eastwood, anytime. He's made a series of fine films. I'd say his best, well, I don't know if it's his best, but starting with Unforgiven and then moving forward after that, I think things really got good for that guy. But
yeah, as far as the directing level?
Yeah, as far as the directing level, I think he upped his game. His chops got really good in the 90s.
Yeah, Unforgiven was, I think, 92. And then Gran Torino's good. $1 Million Baby. Was he was in The Line of Fire. Was that in the 90s?
I can't remember. Maybe that was in the 80s. But maybe it's in the 90s.
And then, of course, there's the Dirty Harry stuff. I know we should probably do one of those at some point as well. So anyway, plenty of Clint Eastwood to do. So we'll probably need to like start sprinkling it into future episodes. Speaking of future episodes, next week we'll be back with Jack V. Lloyd, special guest for Schooling the World. It's a documentary about the education system, and we're going to have lots to chew on that one. So do join us for that. You can find this episode at thelaunchpadmedia.com. The is important for that. So thelaunchpadmedia.com, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. You can find the show notes and more for this episode at Last Nighters, www.lastnighters.com/34. And Robert, final word before we say goodnight from last night.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Every click, every listen, every share just warms my cockles. So if you want to warm cockles, that's what you got to do. It's really super simple. But yeah, you want to grow the show, make us happy, make yourselves happy, make the world a more free place in the world to live with your families and your friends and your babies and your Josey Waleses. So take care, everybody. We'll check you next time.
All right. Good night from last night.